Assalamu alaikum, everyone, from National Incubation Center at Lahore. Welcome you all back to our Entrepreneur in Conversation series. The idea here, as we've said before, is very much for us to be inspired by the great experiences of trailblazing entrepreneurs that we are lucky to have join us for these conversations. And I'm especially excited about today's speaker, Dr. Ayesha Khanna. Ayesha is the co-founder and CEO of ADDO AI, which is a company headquartered in Singapore, but does a lot of its work in Pakistan. So it's a great success story. We're fortunate to have her as a member of our advisory board at NIC Lahore. And she's actively engaged in guiding us on strategizing the delivery of our various programs. She's this is long bio, so I wouldn't belabor how accomplished she is, but just a few key points. She's a strategic advisor on artificial intelligence, smart cities, fintech, and so on and so forth, to leading corporations and governments, and serves on the board of IMDA, which is the Singapore government's agency that develops and regulates its world-class technology sector to drive the country's digital economy. So anyone who knows Singapore knows how strategically important that initiative is, and it's great to have Ayesha be part of that. She's also a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Councils, where she provides thought leadership on the impact and governance of emerging technologies. She's often referred to as a futurist and as a trailblazing innovator, and so on and so forth. What I'm really interested in actually is another great initiative that she took in Singapore with 21st Century Girls. It is a nonprofit organization that delivers free coding and artificial intelligence classes to girls in Singapore. And I hope someday we can bring it over to Pakistan to do the same here, inshallah. Ayesha is a well-known published author of a number of books. There's another upcoming book, U plus AI, in the fall of next year, which talks about amplifying human potential through AI. And I'd love to hear some preview of that if at all possible. Ayesha's academic background is no less impressive. She earned her undergraduate degree in economics from Harvard University, went on to do MS in operations research from Columbia, and a PhD in information systems and in innovation from the London School of Economics. Forbes magazine named her as one of Southeast Asia's groundbreaking female entrepreneurs. The only thing I'd say about that is I think they're 30 years too late. Her talent was well recognized. I've been fortunate to have known her for 3 decades. Sorry, we aged ourselves. But we used to share a stats tutor who basically, when he'd come to teach us and we'd be struggling with the conditional probabilities homework, he'd be telling us how Ayesha just did multivariate regression with a calculator and by hand. So, so that's the nature of her smarts. And so we've been in awe and inspiration of her, and really look forward to this session. So Ayesha, look, I think we'd love to hear your story, how you went from your love for Russian literature to development economics and microfinance and so on and so forth, and basically just embrace the world of AI. So tell us your story and teach us a few things about AI.
Great, thank you so much for having me here, Saleem, and we have known each other for a very long time. I think that, I grew up in Lahore, as did so many of us. And I went to the convent, and then I even went to Connect for a little while. And then I applied to go to America, and I was lucky enough to get into Harvard. I do think it's kind of random, the way everybody gets into these top schools. But it was fortunate that I got the opportunity. And us waqt, I was very into development economics because a lot of people in my family, they were in the government, like my dad, or my mother was a professor of English literature at the university. And my nanas and dada were in the army. So Pakistan, में growing up, it's very natural for us to be interested in how do you better society using different kind of levers. And at that time, my family only knew economic policy as a lever because we were not business people. They never really heard of technology or software engineering or took any interest in it. So, but when I went to Harvard, I realized that I met a lot of people who were interested in applied mathematics. Not the kind of mathematics and statistics, just हमने सीखा था कि इम्तिहान है, you have to get the right answer. There's only one right answer. And, one can kind of memorize one's way through life and a lot of exams. But I think it's changing in Pakistan, and definitely I was exposed to it. This idea of critically evaluating things and critically thinking about things. That's what I think the liberal arts education really teaches you. So I began to think of engineering and math and got exposed to computer science. It's a very creative endeavor. And in that way, no different from the literature that I loved so much, the Russian novelists, or the surrealist art that I studied, or the human rights thing, philosophical challenges that I was interested in. Once I realized that technology is essentially another way to think creatively, things started clicking in my mind. And I thought, कि ये तो मैं भी कर सकती हूँ. And by the way, I was not that good. In fact, जब मैं Columbia गई, I was horrible at computer science. And I was never as good as the best people that I encountered in my life in Lahore, in Boston, anywhere. But I mean, I liked it. So, being a Lahori, we go after everything we like. So I went after it. And I was lucky enough to surround myself with people who were always better than me and for some reason were willing to teach me. So I think that has been very important for me. Then I went to Wall Street. I was a software engineer, then a business analyst, also project management around algorithmic trading systems, credit derivative systems. Or Wall Street was investing a lot in data. सारे quants के साथ हम काम करते थे, traders के साथ, and I really saw firsthand how high frequency, low latency data is processed by these huge servers that they had and what are the algorithms that they were using. And that's when I really fell in love with data science and statistics and went to do my master's as well in it. And then I decided, I'm having my kids, so let me take a break. And so I decided to do my PhD, which is not a break at all. So that was a big mistake thinking it would be a break. But I went to London and I started looking at smart cities. And there I really began to be interested in how do very large systems, software systems, data systems, impact citizens and impact work. And it was a very good break for me because all of us who are technologists, हम बहुत ज़्यादा उसको idealize करते हैं कई दफ़ा. And it's important to have your critical thinking hat back on and evaluate both the good and the bad in it. So then I came to Singapore and I worked on a few other projects. And then I said, यहाँ तो इतनी explosion हो रही है data की, इतनी opportunity है. I want to do something similar to what I did in New York. And that's when I went to Pakistan. And I asked somebody to introduce me to one of the top data and AI scientists in Pakistan. And they introduced me to my co-founder, Dr. Faisal Kamran. And both of us decided to start ADDO AI. And 99% of our team sits in Lahore and DHA or in Islamabad. And then we have been very fortunate to get a lot of very interesting projects, largely, if not wholly, because of the talent that exists in our team, and in particular is run technically by my co-founder. So I think the lesson in all of this is that you should always try to go after things that you didn't start with necessarily. Yeah, I was very far away from AI. I was doing math and statistics, which is the foundation of it. But anybody in the world can actually take on and start using AI in their company, in their career. They may not be the AI engineer, but they can be part of the team that uses it to innovate. And I certainly am an example of that. And what I want to do a little bit now is talk about what is artificial intelligence and some of its applications, and maybe take everyone through a little bit of a project life cycle. And then I'll open it up to Q&A. So
Perfect.
I'm going to share my slides and I'll skip over some of them क्योंकि मैंने काफी ज़्यादा इकट्ठी की थी. But basically आजकल बहुत हाइप है AI की, हर एक बात कर रहा है. I mean literally लगता है everybody and their nanny knows how to do AI because it's just become a buzzword. Now there are two parts to it. One, is it real or is it just hype? And it is very much real because we work on automation for a lot of large companies. For example, three of the largest telcos in the world, Singtel, which is Singapore's largest telco, Telenor, one of Europe's largest telcos, Ooredoo, Qatar's largest telco with subsidiaries in ASEAN, they're our clients. Some of the largest banks, largest healthcare companies, some government agencies, more and more are using artificial intelligence to do a lot of things, including proactively work on optimizing their processes and customizing the customer experience. So it's a lot of stuff out there. They basically, AI does three things. And if you know these three things, you're halfway there already. It can do repeatable routine tasks for us. This picture, I didn't take it, but I went to this factory in Munich. It's the BMW factory, and these huge robotic arms are doing all the work that of putting together the car. Now, this work could have been done by a team of human engineers, but those human engineers then come at the last bit where they're actually putting together and inserting and looking at the design of the car and safety. Machines can also analyze huge amounts of data for us, and that is just not possible by any human team or any Excel spreadsheet that you may run. And that's what we see when you look at breast cancer and other kinds of cancers can be detected earlier because the AI can recognize kind of preconditions for cancerous tumors. And finally, why it's sort of intelligent is not only does it ingest data and react to it, it can actually act upon it as well, such as this dog. Iska naam hai Spot. He was made by Boston Dynamics. And if you go to any of the parks in Singapore, a number of them, you will find Spot the dog kind of looking at you, and he'll kind of warn you to keep your social distancing. So we are going in a world where there is not a single job in which AI, whether it is in a robot, in a machine, in a robotic arm, in a chatbot, or at the back end of your businesses, they will all use data and they will all use AI. So it doesn't make any sense for anybody, regardless of which field, law, entertainment, food, logistics, not to take an interest in AI. So what you really hear about all the time is log baat kar rahe hain artificial intelligence ki, machine learning ki, problem solving, data science, supervised, deep learning. It's all branches of the same thing. And there's record kind of AI funding startups happening all the time that you see, 26.6 billion in 2019. Now, where does Pakistan sit on this? The Pakistan has two things in its favor. Number one, it has talent. Enormous amounts of talent, which lies in our great universities like LUMS, ITU, and others in NUST and Punjab University. Jahan foundation is very strong with computer science or mathematics or statistics. Then accompanying them, you have very good business schools and other kinds of institutions that can marry it to solve problem solving. And the other thing we have a lot of in Pakistan, of course, is a lot of problems that are not solved yet. And I think what I'm going to do is kind of give you some examples of how some companies are doing it that can be ideas for how we can do it as well. Now, consumer market in Pakistan is exploding. We have over 208 million people. Personalization is something artificial intelligence does really well. So essentially what it does is it is able to, whenever you go to a website or anywhere else, it's able to give you the right information at the right time. And Amazon ने ये बहुत पहले से किया हुआ था. Like it's been doing it for a decade and becoming better and better. In fact, 30% of Amazon.com's revenue comes from this lower customers who bought this item also bought kind of barn. But what's the next big thing? If your aim is to be customer centric, then you're always trying to improve the customer experience. And search is another thing, which is very important. When you're searching for something, a lot of times what you end up having is that you don't get what you really want. So Twiggle is a startup that actually is able to use computer vision and natural language processing to improve your search results. So if you say, I want Scandinavian design and orange chair, it will give you the kind of things that you want. And this has a 9% increase in add to cart rate and a 12% uplift in click-through rate. And why are these things important? Because they improve the business, but they do it by improving the customer experience. And all of it uses artificial intelligence. The next best thing is voice commerce. More and more, we are going to be talking, and that requires natural language processing as well as speech recognition. And more, millions of customers are using voice assistants to make purchases. So this is an opportunity where Pakistan can kind of leapfrog. Now you can just leapfrog straight to just use voice commerce altogether, which is having a 45% year-on-year gain since 2018 and will continue basically. Although 2019, since 2019, it dipped a little bit because of COVID. And then there's this whole idea of live streaming, $175 billion market. Just andar Alibaba uses it. This woman is like the Kim Kardashian of live streaming. She comes on and she tests all the products, and hundreds of millions of people are watching her. And then they have questions. ये कहाँ से मिलेगा, इसका डिस्काउंट क्या है, ये मेरे साइज में अवेलेबल है या नहीं. And Alime Shop Assistant uses artificial intelligence to make recommendations to the customers all real time. So you have hundreds of thousands of people all getting a personalized customer experience. This is also very important when you're shopping. And then finally, you have this idea of from your search to your recommendations to your customer questions to getting it in your hand. That last part also involves AI because you want to get the product as soon as possible. And this is another thing which is very important, logistics optimization. A vaccine ke saath aap dekh rahe hain, this is again a huge need for everyone. So that is also another area in which you see a huge amount of investment. And as more infrastructure is built in a country like Pakistan, as a mega cities and cities like Lahore, Islamabad, and Karachi all expand into and become bigger, sprawling mega regions, logistics optimization is going to be very important as well. Each one of them can be handled by the same company or by different companies. Of course, you have Alibaba and Amazon, you're just buying all of this stuff. But even if you're not, the only way to do it is through using data optimization. Latin America is a very good example for us, ASEAN and Latin America. And Mercado Libre is an online company that's been using AI and warehouses and associated technologies really to reduce the time of delivery from 1 day to 2 day deliveries, from 1 day to even less than 1 day, and 1 week to 1 or 2 day deliveries. इसकी स्टॉक मार्केट भी डबल, प्राइस भी डबल हो गई है, इसके यूजर्स भी डबल हो गए हैं. So अगर आप पाकिस्तान में e-commerce market देखें, you can say it's $1 billion by some estimate. Now let's compare it to India, that's $50 billion. Compare it to Indonesia, that's about $35 billion. Same in Australia. So it's very small. But the key metric here is to see year-on-year growth. And that is quite significant across all of the Asian growth economies. And if you're in any way involved in something that involves selling things online, then artificial intelligence is very important from the way you present that to your customer all the way to how it reaches them at the end of any questions they may have regarding it. So I think that is one area. The other area, of course, which is very big, is the unbanked. And both of these areas, by the way, we have had customers for both of these areas. The first area in e-commerce, we were able to do targeted marketing and logistics optimization for a very big retail company. And for this also for two very large banks, we have done this credit. And my co-founder and I, along with another co-founder, are starting a fintech company in Pakistan that is buy now, pay later, that gives microloans at point of sale in e-commerce. So this is again a very big area of interest for me. Guys, 8 minutes. Sorry, I'm just gonna pause for 1 second. I'll tell them to keep.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, that's okay. Sorry guys, आजकल बच्चों की छुट्टियां उनके दोस्त हैं.
No worries at all.
Okay, so now we see, Pakistan में हमें सब ये पता है काफी ज़्यादा, but I want to give you an example of Latin America because I think it's interesting. A lot of what we do is look at China and look at Asia, but I think or Europe. But if you look across at this map, you can see that the majority of the world is unbanked. They don't have access to a credit card. Pakistan में तो mortgages भी नहीं लोग ज़्यादा लेते. And in Southeast Asia, 58% of 612 million adults in South Asia do not have banks or credit. And it's about very similar. It's worse in Latin America, it's 65%. So you have this idea of challenger banks coming up. And the state bank is now looking at this. They're thinking, अच्छा अब हमें digital banks allow करने चाहिए, हमें किस किस्म की financial fintech companies को allow करना चाहिए. It's a very interesting area. Our new bank जो है, that is Brazil's giant neobank. It's valued at 10 billion and increasing, 30 million customers. And they said कि जो सारा customer experience जो इतना horrible है कि जाओ बैंक में और अपने papers उन्हें दो, ये सब हम automate कर देंगे और हम mobile पे डाल देंगे. और it's very कभी mortgage लो तो समझ नहीं आती payment कब करनी है, कैसे करनी है. We're going to simplify this whole experience. And again, a lot of the core value proposition there is to get the data from customers and then to make sure that they have an easy, simple experience. And what they've done is they then went to Mexico and they said कि Mexico की भी unbanked population is 38 million. 50% of the population is under 24 years of age. And I believe Pakistan's mean age is 22 years, median age. And it is very digitally engaged, but only 10% have credit cards. And so now they said, we are going to give, using artificial intelligence, we'll give a credit card to somebody. How would you know? So if somebody came, you're at a bank, somebody comes to you and says, okay, I'm a woman, I am in Orangi in Karachi, I never went to school, I don't have a college degree, but I really want to start a beauty salon. And if you did the math on that, you're like, beauty salons ki business to bahut har jagah upar ja rahi hai. But why would I give this woman a loan? And the thing is that if you had access to her behavior, her digital behavior, you would be able to make some kind of judgment instead of only looking at the transactions she has with the bank. So a lot of companies like Nubank give you an app, or if you have a mobile wallet or your telco, and you could see that she was paying her bills. She was going grocery shopping the same time every month, or that she was actually looking at beauty salon YouTube videos, that she was actually not chatting with her friend all day long on the phone, that she actually charged her phone on time and didn't let the battery run out all the time. Believe it or not, all of these have been shown to exhibit credit risk behavior. And this is what digital data footprints do. They actually just look at your behavior. पुराने ज़माने में, and it's weird to call it पुराना ज़माना because it's not that long ago, but you would categorize people as personas. Say इसकी शादी हुई है, इसके 4 बच्चे हैं, ये यहाँ रहता है, DHA में रहता है, ये कराची में डिफेंस में रहता है, या ये he owns this much land, owns a car. Now people with data, you don't look at that. You look at their behavior. And that behavior is, this person is credit worthy because he's going to certain sites, because he's doing certain things, because he's answering questions in a certain way at a certain speed, using small caps or large caps. Everything becomes a data point. Now, I'll talk about this later when I talk about the fact that all of this like excitement about data has to be governed and managed in a very ethically sound manner. But let's just say that you have all this data. When you have data, then you're able to make judgments on that person's risky behavior. You can see, how often he tops up his credit, what is his bundling that he uses, when did he use discounts, a call payment pattern kya hai, call pattern kya hai, movement kaisi hai if you have GPS. All of these things give you an idea about credit risk. And this is what's happening. Neobanks are coming up. They're definitely going to come up in Pakistan. There are lots of fintech companies, but not all of them are using data properly. And that is what separates, in the long run, in my opinion, part of what will separate the winners from the losers. This is the ADDO team. They've raised 26.4 million in Mexico. Now, what will separate Nubank and ADDO is their ability of customer service and customer centricity. And that really is helped by data. So ये सारे challenger banks हैं. You can see a Brazilian bank is the most valuable challenger bank in the world, and one expects that will be the case coming from India and other large countries as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of skip over the next example, and I'm going to take you through what does AI mean. I mean, I've thrown some buzzwords at you, but in reality, इसका मतलब क्या है? So let's take a journey. Let's just imagine कि हमने कुछ AI में कुछ शुरू करना है. Is it going to cost me millions of dollars? क्या मुझे बहुत सारे millions of data points चाहिए हैं? Is it going to take me a year? Like, what does it take? Well, the first thing, believe it or not, that everybody struggles with is कि मैं करना क्या है इसके साथ? A lot of the time, people come to me and say कि Ayesha, can you just help us use AI in our company? And they're CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies, but they literally they have to be told it's not a magic bullet. You kind of need to know what business problem you're solving and how you would measure success. And for that you don't need to be an AI engineer or business person. You just have to be a logical person who cares about her or his clients. So in this case, let's just say you said, I send customers a targeted marketing campaign, and I send it, and उससे मुझे कुछ brand lift मिलता है, कुछ लोग खरीदते हैं as a result. You know what? I would like to increase that brand lift by 10% through personalized marketing. Usually people have a list, and उसको कुछ rules के साथ वो कहते हैं कि अच्छा इस बंदे को आयशा को हर 2 महीने भेज दो कि नए bags आए हैं या ये आया, हर महीने कुछ नया भेज दो. There's no systematic way. There's just some rules that are hard coded. Now you have a very clear measure of success. You have a clear goal. Now what do you do? Well, now you have to find out who are you going to send your, let's say you have new perfumes in your shop, e-commerce store. Who are you going to send those new perfumes to, and when are you going to send it to them? Well, now you need to look at the data. You need to understand who is the person who's most likely going to buy that perfume at that time. Is Ayesha going to buy Chanel 5 discount one day after Christmas, for example? Now, for that, now you need data. अब इसके अंदर most big companies do track people's buying behavior. So they do track कि Ayesha online का buy थी, उसने कैंपेन्स में कैसे रिएक्ट किया था, और उसके मोबाइल फोन पे उसने कितनी दफा शनेल को देखा वर्सेस उसने किसी और चीज को देखा. All of this, plus her demographic, her purchase history, and that of similar people, all of this is lying in systems, in databases in the company's servers or in the cloud. Now your data engineers will identify this data and say, to find whether Ayesha or people like Ayesha will buy this, we will have to see what their purchase behavior and their history is. Now, if you don't have this data because you're a startup, that's okay. Nobody has data to begin with. They accumulate data over time. If you don't have data, then yes, do use the rules. You can say if Ayesha is a woman and she is, coming to our website X times a month and looking at this page, then it's more likely that she'll do it. Now, let's say you're not even logging on your website. Now, that's where you're making a mistake. So I would say when you build a product, any product, शुरू से उसके अंदर data डाल दें. लोग कहते हैं ना, digitization is the big thing. Actually, data-driven digitization is the big thing. Whatever product you're making, bake in that how will you use data. And of course, for that, you'll need proper people who've studied it. You need data engineers and data scientists, and they should be in your team. Or if you are interested in it, you should learn how to do that. Now, the next thing is data. तो हमने इकट्ठा कर दिया, ये data चाहिए, यहाँ पड़ा हुआ है. अब AI models करने हैं. Now, for that, you need the data scientist or the machine learning engineer. So the data engineer will take the data and put it in a manner which can be used by the data scientist or machine learning engineer. That will then apply some statistical probabilistic models that we now call machine learning, such as neural networks, etc. अब उसके अंदर आप बैठ के देख रहे हैं, वो कर रहे हैं और वो आपको दे देते हैं. Now, if you have a background in AI, then of course you can probe them on it. Even if you don't, you should still ask them, ये कैसे बना? वो कहेंगे जी आपको नहीं समझ आएगी. नहीं, आप कोशिश करें मुझे बताने की. हमेशा try to understand there is some logic to it, and they can explain the logic to you, and you or anybody else can understand it. They may give you some basic, some basic kind of parameters, etc., that they're using. So your technical team is no longer some back office where you literally, Wall Street, you have to walk to another office, which was the back office. And that's where people like me would sit, and my family was so disturbed कि इतना बाहर भेजा और ये back office में बैठी हुई है. अब वो back office front office में आ गया और front office से भी आगे आ गया, board पे आ गया basically. So you need to sit side by side. This old way कि business लोग यहाँ बैठते हैं और AI लोग और data लोग यहाँ बैठते हैं, it's not good. You need to mingle and you need to talk to each other. You need to explain the business to them, and they need to explain the AI to you, or vice versa if you're a techie who's listening to this. So now they will give you some output. They'll say, इस algorithm ने कहा है कि इन लोगों को ये perfume इस time पे भेज दें over this channel. And how did they find that out? Well, they were looking for hidden patterns. I'll give you a very simple example. You can see, if I asked you which is the cat and which is the dog, you can tell me because you've been conditioned to recognize it. And also humans are more intelligent and are born with the ability to recognize patterns. Now, the way the AI does it is, it says कि ये दोनों तो काफी similar लग रहे हैं, दोनों के कान भी खड़े हैं, दोनों की आंखें भी हैं. But आहिस्ता, if you give it like 1,000 cat pictures and 1,000 dog pictures, it will begin to find something, such as the distance between the eyes, maybe, or maybe some whisker length, things that you may not even have thought of as a human being. It will pick up on it and it will say, "Acha, now show me a new picture. ये तो बिल्ली है." उसको समझ आ जाएगी, because it is seeing some pattern that is very, very granular by looking at all, like taking a picture and making millions of pixel points and looking at it and analyzing it. And that's really how everything works. That's how a lot of the probabilistic machine learning models work. They just have a probability and a confidence level based on pattern recognition. अच्छा जी, अब आपने कह दिया कि अब मैं आयशा और उसके दोस्तों को ये Chanel 5 टाइप परफ्यूम्स भेजने लगी हूँ, अब मैं भेजूं या ना भेजूं? Well, here's the thing. You can't just use an AI algorithm and throw it out there. You need to think about data governance. This is what I was talking about earlier. You have to follow the rules of data privacy of that country, and every country has its own rules, including Pakistan. And then you need to have some ethical guidelines. For a marketing campaign, it maybe not that much, but if you're giving a loan for a house or a college loan, you're affecting people's lives significantly. And so you have to be careful and double check all the reasons why, how that data is being used and why it's coming to that conclusion. I'll detour very slightly, tell you that there was a big case where Amazon decided that it was going to use an AI HR tool. And it said कि अब हम the people who are best for this job अभी AI जो है ना ये चुनेगी because AI is very smart. But the AI kept picking men for all the jobs. To all us women, it's very obvious that that can't be any sensible choice to always pick men. And after a while, somebody, when they went back and noticed the data, they realized that the data was biased, that the algorithm was just copying the behavior of HR manager who was always picking men for technology jobs, for example. So this kind of data governance, keeping an eye कि data कौन सा use हो रहा है, and there by the way statistical metrics for it, fairness metrics, their governance policies. Singapore में we have AI guidelines. क्या you make sure आप किसी को manipulate नहीं कर रहे, आप किसी की you're not reselling the data of somebody. If I'm on a website, I am browsing a website, and you sell my data to an insurance company. And they run some algorithm and say ये तो मेरा मतलब है कि इसका तो कोई हाल अच्छा नहीं, ये बीमार हो जाएगी. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but that is the way algorithms and correlation work. Sometimes they pick up patterns, and you have to be very careful to make sure that your data is handled very carefully. So before you put it out there, anything that you and your data science team build, you must follow the regulations. And in GDPR, there's a lot of interesting stuff. I really like the Europeans because they have a fundamental appreciation of data as a human right. And they said, you have the right to be forgotten. अब देखिए, let's say हम सब ने कुछ ना कुछ तो किया होता है अपने बचपन में या जवानी में, and then वो अब इंटरनेट पे बस फिक्स हो. That's horrible, right? And so in Europe, you can ask, you can go to Google and say, delete this, and it has to do it. And I think these are some of the things that are very important. Like you can stop a company from transferring your data. The bank will not give it to the telco. You can say, no, I don't authorize this. So you have agency over your data, and your customers have agency. So both as a business owner, you have given that right, and both as a consumer, you demand that right. I think that's very important when it comes to data. And then, of course, you have now you've checked all the boxes with your legal team, and now you said, "Acha, now मुझे पता चल गया, अब मैं इसको टेस्ट करना चाहती हूँ." Because कोई भी algorithm फौरन तो नहीं बंदा करता ना. I mean, you test it, उसकी A/B testing होती है. उसको आप tweak करते हो, उसको improve करते हो, and then you send it to like 10, 100 people, and then another 100 people, and you keep improving it, and then eventually you see, wow, okay, this algorithm, targeted marketing, is giving the right people the right offer at the right time. And in our case, we actually saw there was a 40% boost and uplift. If it gets it wrong, let's say if it sent it to me and I didn't like it and I didn't buy it, the algorithm learns. अच्छा, आयशा को ये पसंद नहीं आया, शायद आयशा जैसी बंदी को ये पसंद ना आए, या शायद टाइम ठीक नहीं था, या शायद कोई नहीं था, या कोई ह्यूमन आके कहता है कि ये ठीक नहीं था. So this is very, very important. And I think that's it. Like these are the steps. Most of our AI engines are built in 3 months, and We then integrate them, of course, in the bigger system later on. It can be less than 3 months. You build it, you test it. It's very, very fast and agile. And it allows you to focus on building the kind of product or service that you would want to use as a customer. So I think the 21st century organization is a customer centric organization, whether that customer is your internal employee, a B2B business, or an end consumer, whoever it may be. Using data in a responsible and accountable manner really allows you to focus on what matters, which is giving great service to your customer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go and talk a little bit about women in AI and the 21st century team, which is a team of superheroes. But I'm just going to stop here. What happened was, like I said, for me, my team, we have about 100 machine learning engineers and data scientists and data architects and data engineers who are very data and AI focused. They are really creative, out of the box thinkers. There are about 7-8 different roles that we have just in an AI team, and that's a minimum that you need. लेकिन अगर आपकी छोटी सी company है, you can just have much smaller team. But I did notice, and I still continue to notice, that there are not enough women in our field. And I'm not of the belief that you should keep women just because they're women. I think you should keep women in your team because they're very competent and they're very good. And a lot of the time, women don't enter the field because उनको कभी कोई ये idea नहीं देता. अब मैं देख रही हूँ, अब तो it's become very buzzworthy. पर मुझे तो किसी ने कभी नाम भी नहीं लिया कंप्यूटर साइंस का, सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग का. Like I'd never even heard of the term growing up in Lahore. It just didn't seem like something that we would do. So what I did was, as a result, I'm very few people at board meetings that has a technical background, and not a very strong technical background at that. I wouldn't say like my co-founder or a lot of my team members are much more technically good than I am. But I have worked in it, I have some understanding, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Balki, and I think that the more women that get involved, they'll really enjoy it. So in Singapore, I was at a hackathon, bachon ka, and there was this little girl who came, and there was that electronics booth I was volunteering. So she started making something. थोड़ी देर बाद उसकी अम्मी उसको ले गई और अपना बेटा उन्होंने मेरे सामने रख दिया. अब बेटा आया, वो भी अल्लाह उसका भला करे, वो भी कुछ बनाने लगा, लेकिन लड़की बेचारी रोने लगी. And I said, आपकी बेटी बड़ा अच्छा कर रही है, please let her do it. And she said, no, my daughter is not interested in engineering kind of stuff. After a little while, her grandmother brought her back. And so both the bhai behen then made something very cute and left. That really stayed with me. I realized that there is a cultural bias, whether we like it or not, against women entering tech. And women having the confidence to say, hum bhi achhe hain math mein, hum bhi achhe hain computer science mein, and we can play any role in this field. There is a place for us in technology and data science. And so I started a nonprofit, a charity called 21st Century Girls. And we teach little kids coding, and we also teach teenage girls the basics of AI and coding. And these are girls, they're about 18 to 22. And now we're in our 4th run. Now we're going to make it scale it across the country in Singapore. And they are giving, shuru mein they were so nervous, but then they, after 10 weeks, 3 hours every Saturday. They came in every Saturday morning, aankhein malte hue, itni sweetu, they would all come in and they would study, and they learned the basics of programming. They learned the basics of data science. And then they did some projects, and here they made their presentations, and they were full of confidence. I sincerely believe that without skills, you can't be confident. If you are a girl, I can mentor you, I can encourage you, I can hug you. That won't give you the confidence that learning will give you, that putting in the work will give you. And now we have great courses on Coursera and edX and great universities in Pakistan. We should really be investing in upskilling ourselves with the basics of statistics and programming. So I would highly encourage everyone to do that. I think this is a evolving area, and it's something that allows every country to leapfrog. So I would end by saying, कि एक ज़माना था when we would always say, when a new technology comes, everybody ends up, it's like a reset. सब उसी finishing line, starting line पे आ जाते हैं. And I feel that this AI and data is a real reset for countries like Pakistan and even for Singapore, and for all countries. हम सब उसी line पे फिर से आ गए. And if we can collaborate with the right teams together, and we can build not only for our economy, but for the world, then there is a lot of advantage economically that our young people would have in Singapore, in Pakistan, in America, anywhere, anybody who studies this. And I'm a big proponent of women being part of that, because you can't have half your talent not knowing this basic skill. It's as important as reading, writing, or doing math. And the majority of new consumers in the market are going to be women who are joining the middle class. So to understand women, to create products and services for women, you need to be a woman or have a woman techie on your team. So I hope that all of you will join it. You'll see that it's very possible to do this. If you ever doubt it, you can look at me as an example. I am with a highly technical team, and they're the ones who are really the superstars. But by getting together, the real team together, you can do this in your product, and you can learn the basics as well. So thank you so much for having me here. Thanks, Saleem.
Thank you. This is a absolutely fantastic talk. So thank you for illuminating us on so many different points. And to your last point, I think AI is a great equalizing force, where I think this is our opportunity and moment to leapfrog our lacking kind of speed and pace with which we've been, adopting technology and producing technology. So our youth dividend isn't essentially going to pay off if we don't massively upscale. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we produce these 80,000 or 100,000 orders a year? Obviously there's a government policy issues and advice that you can probably offer from your Singapore experience. Their model on lifelong learning, the $500 incentive they give everyone to just go and learn, the exploration on their skills, requiring people to upskill. I mean, these are great ideas and not that hard to implement if one thinks about it, right? I mean, we waste a lot of money doing a lot of things that could probably be channeled better. So I'd love to hear your policy thoughts on that first, and then maybe we can dig in some more on the sort of application part of things.
I think Singapore has done an amazing job. I was part of the Ministry of Education's committee that led to Skills Future, which is now their whole program for upskilling all citizens, regardless of their age, to prepare them for the 21st century or the fourth industrial revolution, economy, and industry. And a large part of it is, making education accessible and affordable for all citizens. सबसे पहले तो ये है. इसके लिए हमें, it's very important for the government to provide this. It can be online, it can be in person through a network of satellite classrooms all over the country. I think that is very key, to use digital in a way that hasn't been used before as much. And the good thing about this is, because ये सब cloud पे होता है, you can give a class and then you can also TA it remotely, and then you can even do all your assignments and upload them. So there's a great potential for people. Uske liye, unfortunately, you need a laptop because that is an expense. In Singapore, we're a very small country, so we're providing more and more laptops free to people. Iske liye, I guess there's Chromebooks which are cheaper, but there's some countries that are having at a policy level doing, and I'm sure Pakistan is as well, having deals with manufacturers to have affordable hardware on which to build this. And hardware is becoming cheaper, obviously, over time as well, because our mobile phone pay is a limit to how much you can do. But on the mobile phone, at least you can learn algorithms and mathematics, pencil, paper, ke saath. So there is a way to go up to that. That's very important. The second thing is career counseling. So जो mid career में लोग आते हैं, अब पाकिस्तान में हमें इतना नहीं है because we have a much bigger economy. We're not under threat of automation so much because it's not fully digitized yet. So we worry less about our mid-career people being threatened, their jobs or their tasks being taken away by automation. But definitely those who are younger will face many, many, many challenges and adaptations if they are not able to, first of all, emotionally deal with the fact that jo bhi kaam kare wo automate ho jayega after a while, and how they should stand on the shoulders of automation as opposed to being threatened by it. And I think for that educating them in this is not just the skills, but is a mindset as well. Uske liye the business schools, etc., and the teaching that they're doing, the incubators like this, that's very important because the skill is not, it's research unless it's applied in a way that can actually become a product of a company.
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, हम देखते हैं कि fintech में और financial inclusion में तो data analytics, machine learning, some deep learning stuff is being used. We're beginning to see it in ag tech. Again, harnessing the data for precision agriculture, or again for addressing financial solutions for smallholder farmers. We're beginning to see that. But आपने जो point out किया कि हमारा वो obsolescence लोगों का risk नहीं है यहाँ पे because automation is quite low, which speaks to a low productivity as well, right? So I wonder if the industrial backbone or supply chain management, I mean, obviously, there are lots of other things around food security and food supply chain management that can be enhanced with data analytics and IoT sensors and things of that nature. So uspe, I mean, आपने कोई काम किया पाकिस्तान में और या नहीं? I mean, are there any opportunities that you would highlight there for people to focus on? Because our ethos at NIC is very much problem solving, right?
Yes.
We're not trying to do rocket science. We're just trying to solve problems that Pakistan has and match the opportunities to those problems that are high impact. So Usme, love to hear your thoughts on that. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think हमने एक company के साथ काम किया था. I think Faisal worked with it, which was on the input and output optimization of it was a fertilizer company, where you can optimize the input to get better output, more bang for your buck, basically. But definitely predictive maintenance में, manufacturing में, logistics में, oil and gas, हर जगह there's an opportunity to use data and AI better. But I think the question really is which industry, which CEO, which is ready for it. And at that point, the calculus, there are two things, right? Either you're a startup and you're being funded by VCs, or you're a company and the calculus is that the money that you're spending on setting up your data infrastructure and your data analytics will pay off in terms of cost benefits or greater revenue. And that is when the business people are needed, really, because they sit down and they do the math behind it and they're able to show, for example, if you move things to the cloud, it's not as expensive as having a team that's always looking after your servers locally. So there's a lot more companies that are motivated now to have insights into their output, into their manufacturing, into their container optimization, etc., which they were not that into before. इसी तरह अगर आप हॉस्पिटल्स को देखें, उनका जो इतना सारा डेटा होता है, वो उन्होंने इन्वेस्ट किया है to either keep it on servers and they have to maintain them, they have to look after them. But if they put it on the cloud, immediately everything becomes much cheaper and more automated. Of course, you have a data regulation for certain countries, for certain sectors such as financial services and personally identifiable data that we have to be careful about. But I think for every single thing that you pointed out, there is opportunity. I mean, even if you look at IoT and you look at the distribution of food in a country, in a city like Karachi, especially perishable food. Agar e-commerce upar ja raha hai, food delivery upar ja rahi hai, how are you going to optimize that? And that is clearly an AI and data. अगर आप
And then
मुझे
also, yeah,
export को देखें, for example. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So you've done a lot of work in the on the smart city side as well, right? So Pakistan, as we know, is, cities are rapidly urbanizing. There's a lot of infrastructure pressure, obviously far from being a smart city. But are there any sort of learnings from that you think in our current stage of development in this urbanization cycle that we can address that? And also, I mean, the government has a lot of these new initiatives of like building 5 million homes and all of that stuff. I wonder if there's a way to kind of adapt or learn from the smart cities concept to maybe not automate to that level of smart cars and robots, but perhaps better planning.
I think it really varies from agency to agency. So, for example, we're going to work with a very large Ministry of Health agency in ASEAN, going to build a very big crisis management infrastructure for them, starting with COVID, where they can actually know and connect it to all the hospitals and all the clinics so that they know who is the person who is coming in who has tested positive or been tested negative, and connected to their to their national registry to know who they are, where they live, etc. And over time to be able to allocate more resources because the data can then be used to predict कि यहाँ COVID spike हो जाएगा, यहाँ कम हो जाएगा. COVID is one example. It could be any disease. And based on that, you're able to staff your hospitals, your doctors, your pharmacies much better. And so this COVID infrastructure actually is going to expand into a proper health crisis management infrastructure. अब ये easily Pakistan में भी हो सकता है. For this, you need to have data pipelines connected to various hospitals. That means hospitals need to have their और कुछ काफी hospitals के पास हैं. They have locally implemented systems. And then we already have the we have our national identification registry, NADRA. उसके साथ आप link कर दें, you get all the other information. So we actually have a lot of data in the government already. We have just not been able to connect it. And large part of that is because we struggle with the idea of big data. Traditionally software में हम सब databases छोटू से बनाते थे, बड़े भी बनाते थे. But big data का architecture where you have petabytes of data daily coming in, streaming data, real-time data, उसके लिए आपको big data engineers or big data architects चाहिए होते हैं. And Pakistan में है कुछ, but we had a pretty hard time finding some really good ones. And then we have worked on a couple of these very big projects, and that requires a different skill level. So once you have that, then you can build the big data infrastructure. उसके ऊपर आप machine learning layer build करते हो. So that is a bit of a challenge because we are in a new era now. But I think data है हमारे पास, बहुत है, taxes का भी है, सबका है. We can do much better distribution of our subsidies, for example, that we have. Pakistan, like India and other countries, is digitizing services. We just don't know how to use the data now that we get from it.
Okay. Saima, shall we open it up for questions? So Ayesha, just for your information, we've given priority access to our incubatees in the cohort. We figured that they have the first right of refusal on those questions. So so why don't we do that? Saima, do you have folks ready?
Yeah, we do. So we'll have Khalid from Intelligent Drug first. Khalid?
And Khalid, please take a second to very quickly explain what maybe in like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, what your venture is about.
Right. Thank you, Ayesha, for this insightful session. So I'm Khalid, founder of Intelligent Drug Dispensary. We provide prescription writing app to the doctors, which is integrated with an interface for the pharmacist and one for the patient. The data we shall mine through these three user types is what we shall apply AI and ML on to offer sales patterns in real time and predictive visualizations to our clients in pharmaceutical and healthcare manufacturing industry. Now I'm going to run you through some questions that we created for you. So firstly, we see your presence across the globe today, catering clients who belong to entirely different industries. Makes me wonder how you segmented your buyers and how difficult was consumer acquisition for you during your early startup stage.
That's a very good question. Actually, this was not planned that way. When you're starting, we're a services company. We're building our first product, but a services company is different from a product company. A product company is very focused on one thing. Hamara services mein, we were focused just on the technical area in the beginning. Now we're more focused on telcos and banks and healthcare. But at that time, we were just taking clients as they were coming to us. And so I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go because you want to build a repeatable service model, which we are building now. We have 3, 4 offerings, and that's all we do. Again, I think you're right. It was very opportunistic the way we moved, but I don't think that's the right way necessarily. We got lucky कि हमें बहुत सारे clients मिल गए all over the world. But it's hard to manage, as you can imagine. A lot of it was because I would go and give a talk somewhere, and then people would come up to me afterwards, and then I would say, "Ah, ये तो बड़ा अच्छा project है, we should take it." But I think it's much better to be focused, and just like you're doing on a product, and product is again very different from a service. A product company by nature is very focused and has a very specific customer, a very specific offering, and expands over time. With services firms, what you find is that they're quite generic and then they focus over time quite a bit. So we're becoming more focused now than we were before on just 3 industries and 2 regions.
All right, that makes perfect sense. So another one for you was that you've partnered with 3 competitors providing PaaS, IaaS, and SaaS. That's Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. So what makes you choose one over the other when you're tailoring to the needs of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, so there are 2 things that one takes into account. One is that they may already be on that platform and they may have a reason to work with that platform. So in that case, we have to be well versed because they're the 3 main ones. So we're well versed in them. The other is if they are, if there's a specific interest that they have. For example, in healthcare, if you're migrating from Epic, which is 80% of companies, hospital networks in America are on Epic, then Microsoft very good integration with them, which is why we recommended it. But if you're looking at Pakistan, and you're looking at fintech, for example, and you look at the data service sector, we also looked at AWS, Amazon, and we recommend that. That is a very good product for that kind of financial services data. So we do a cost benefit analysis depending on what they need and what the referenceable clients in that area are, and also what our own experience is. But they're very close to each other. With AWS and Microsoft really running after the big guns and Google also coming out. But regardless, the bottom line is always cloud wins over on-premise.
All right. Sounds good. So the organizational structure of ADDO AI appears to be a flatarchy. Was this envisioned from day one? If so, what made you incline towards it? And if not, what made you switch to it?
It seems to be a flat hierarchy, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it seems to be a flatarchy. I mean, I was able to see a whole lot of people on the same level.
Yes. So it is and it isn't. They are. It's definitely flatter than I think a lot of other organizations because it's based on skill, and then there's some managerial positions. So if you look at the associate partners we have, they're all at the same level because they all bring in different skills that are equally important, but they're very specific. So somebody's in computer vision, somebody's in GIS, somebody's in NLP, somebody's in forecasting, and or explainable AI. So they're very equal that way. They are bought in at different times. Then we have other things that people who are good managers. These are the VPs or the AVPs. And I think that's just the nature because we do something that's very specialized. We can't, our hierarchy is based less only on management as much as it is on scale. So a very good big data engineer may not be managing anybody, but it's actually very important to us. Even if he just has 3 good data engineers working with him, basically who he's mentoring. So it's based, and I think that is the nature of the evolving nature of companies. We'll see a lot more flattening, a lot more respect, mutual respect of skills, and then just a very small core group of managers who are along their own hierarchy at the side.
Right, right. So there's one more thing that I was noticing, that we were able to identify several expert data scientists in your team. Did you start your business with as many? And how many of these do you actually assign to one client?
You mean the associate partners, or do you mean the actual people on like the whole team?
The entire team, because we see a lot of names there, and I can see that they're experts in this industry. So how many of them do you actually assign to single client?
It really depends. It could be anywhere from 2 to 6. It just depends on what's needed. It depends on the stage of the project. It depends on what is the skill that's needed. So if it's an associate partner, there may be 1 or 2, depending on what is needed. If they're actually in the data science team itself, they have to work with data engineers, the data architects. Usually, for example, there's only 1 data architect who will work.
Right.
But then he's under the supervision of a technical lead, and then there's 1 big data engineer if there's a lot of big data, such as in telco, but then there'll be 4 or 5 data engineers. Then there'll be like 2 or 3 machine learning engineers, but for exploratory data analysis, there'll be another 1 or 2 data scientists. Of course, you have the ML SecOps people. That's very important because you have to version all the models. So there'll be at least 1 of those, probably just 1, to be honest. And then the managers. So it's more or less the same team makeup. It depends on, because it works in a very agile manner, the small teams go a long way. And I prefer smaller teams in general.
Right, right. Thank you so much for that. Now, based on where you stand today, I'm honestly intimidated to ask you this one. But when you look back, do you ever feel that you should have done something differently? Were there any mistakes made that had to be corrected or perfected later on? If so, would you mind sharing them with us?
Yeah, no, I have nothing but mistakes in my past and many failures. Would I change any of them? No, because, at my age, you kind of think, well, I became this because of everything I went through. But I started lots of startups that didn't work. I had an ego problem that was very unnecessary. I was a type A personality. I was not very emotionally intelligent. All of these things happened quite a bit. I wanted to take shortcuts. I didn't understand and appreciate how long things take. But I think the best thing that I've realized, which I wish I realized from the start, was you choose your co-founders not only based on skills, but on values. And I know it sounds very cheesy when you hear that, but that makes all the difference. People who value the same thing, who complement you, and then a team that's really, really good, technically strong and good people. So a nice mix of that. So I think that is really what eventually helped, was that I had a really good team, a really good co-founder, and that is the secret to anybody's success.
Right, right. So thank you so much, Ayesha, for the time and the energy that you invested in us. And I know I'll be pushing it a bit, but if it's possible, would you mind if we could just connect with you in future as well, perhaps through the NICL team?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm at the NIC. Please let me know. I'm happy to. I don't closely mentor any startups at the moment, but I'm happy to have a chat in case you have any questions.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
You do know that she's one of our 5 board members, right?
Right, right. I do. I wasn't really sure if you could directly contact her.
Yeah, Ayesha, I don't know if you had heard, but we have 2 labs at NIC. There's a maker's lab with a 3D printer. I don't know how many materials it can work with, but it's there. And then we have a Facebook Innovation Lab, which is basically a VR and AR fully equipped lab. Right, so so if you think about creating, virtual reality driven solutions or designs or so on and so forth, I think that's a huge opportunity that married with our sort of capabilities on the Makers Lab side of things can actually be a very powerful combination. So are there any ideas that you might want to throw out that you've seen that other countries do or other startups do that, our future cohorts can benefit from?
I think 3D printing, so my expertise is in neither, but I'm very interested in it. 3D printing में तो बहुत ज़्यादा opportunities नज़र आ रही हैं हमें in terms of new kinds of houses that are being made and in the electronics and everything else. In fact, prefabrication in general is something that in Singapore we're taking quite seriously. And for our subsidized housing, which is Housing Development Board, 30% of it is prefabricated outside. So that's the only place where I have had some exposure to that and found it very, very useful. And I think in a Pakistan, जहाँ इतनी ज़्यादा expand कर रही हैं हमारी cities, prefabrication in real estate is a very interesting combination. I know some of the companies are already working on this, but that's something to explore. For VR, AR, I know people use it for gaming a lot. I'm not a gamer at all, so I don't know how to relate to that. But in terms of, I came across this very interesting company recently that does VR for stressful situations. So for example, what it does is simulates that you're sitting in you're a surgeon and you encounter, kind of a once in a lifetime problem, vein cut ki galti se, and then they keep putting you in that same situation in VR so that when it actually happens, you don't panic. And apparently people remember and have benefited from this training, like 70% more, they feel more confident entering into the surgical theater than otherwise. So I thought it's very specific, but it's very interesting on how to desensitize oneself to crisis situations. Of course, military does this all the time, but now we have VR for the common man, common medics do as well. I think that the idea is, again, you're always interested in the problem more than you're interested in the technology. It's almost impossible to find any problem that won't have data, AI, or eventually VR associated with it. But what is the problem that captures your mind? And by the way, you can change your mind about the problem, but at least be committed to it in the moment, give it all your best. And then it takes a long time of hard work and tinkering for something to come through.
Okay, fantastic. Saima, do we want to go to the next question?
Yes, Sana from Resource. Sana?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Khanna. Thank you for such an insightful session. My name is Sana Noman. My startup is Resource. We work with organizations to categorize and quantify their downstream waste and then focus on their upstream activities for waste reduction at source to reduce their carbon footprint.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. My question is, how can AI be used to reduce waste in supply chains? Are there any existing examples of its application?
मुझे पता नहीं है if there are existing applications for waste management, but I can imagine that there must be ways to be able to look at it. And one of the things you could use is probably use IoT sensors and try to identify that at which parts of the process the waste is being created, and then try to optimize the process to reduce the waste. But unfortunately, I'm not a big expert on this. I was on a panel and there was this young woman there. It's very impressive. She had discovered that a lot of these she and her husband's families owned these petrol stations. And they wanted to have something, they wanted to make something that was sustainable for the planet. So they said कि हम जिस तरह जो deliver जो आती हैं और diesel उठा के लेकर जाते हैं, they were doing this in a very inefficient manner for the hotels and the hospitals and everywhere else. And so she and her husband created a network of diesel supply logistics, which is then Tata himself invested in, Ratan Tata. And I just found her very passionate, very interested, and she said that they have actually reduced the wastage that these companies have by significantly. But I don't know her personally, but that was interesting, and that she had taken a very unique approach. You can just order it on your mobile, and the way they do the logistics, the way they optimize it, it's much cheaper for them to deliver it than for everybody to send a car and take it back and forth. So that was interesting. So there are lots of ways that you can do it and optimize, whether it's logistics or it's supply chain or something. I don't know the details, Sana, unfortunately, of how to do that.
Thank you for your response. The second one, my second question is: can AI be used to compute spatial interpolation of air quality data from air monitoring stations in Lahore to identify high carbon zones, emission trends, and sources? Are there any open sources that you're aware of that I can look into?
Again, sorry, मुझे ये बिल्कुल पता नहीं है, but I know that we have some GIS experts, and we were looking at air pollutants in Pakistan at one point for a potential project, and there are ways to do some of these things, but their accuracy, I have no idea about that. But you know, this is the thing about AI. There are so many applications in so many different industries. I would recommend is कि जब आप Google करके you come across somebody, you write directly to them, and they'll be able to help you at some university or something else.
Thank you very much.
Ayesha, I have some questions from our Quetta cohort also. Yeah. I'm going to take their questions up with you. So this is Saira from Shawl Couture. And her question is that despite investing such much in artificial intelligence, for example, in banks and government offices in Pakistan, many revert back to the manual systems. Is this due to the fact that we do not have proper guidance and awareness to our people regarding new technology? And what's the solution for that?
अगर तो उन्होंने इन्वेस्ट किया है तो फिर वो मैनुअल प्रोसेसेस उनको नहीं करने चाहिए. Because but customer onboarding जो है, very few banks if any have really done it properly. उन्होंने automate भी नहीं किया ये, and so it actually goes through a lot of manual processes in the beginning when you sign up, and then at the back office when you reconcile. So I think it's much better to actually either wait for them to do it, or you'd find like a digital neobank or challenger bank will be doing it. Once you have an automated process, I will be very surprised if somebody's not using it. If they're not using it, फिर आप ठीक कह रहे हो कि that the reason might be कि जो सामने बंदा teller बैठा हुआ है, he is just preferring to do it his own way. So a lot of the times, if there's a new tool and they're not using it, it's because they haven't been trained properly. But I think the reason here is deeper than that. I don't think there's enough automation to begin with.
Thank you. Then there's another question that already, I think parts of that you answered. So I don't know if the Pakistani context applies to you, but I'll still ask the question if you want to add something more, or otherwise I'll skip to the next. How did you overcome the stigma of our society that a woman can't do something special? Moreover, how can we overcome the stereotypes that are associated with our society and teach to overcome the mindset that is the ultimate hindrance between achieving something? This is from Feed Me Back from Quetta again. I know you touched upon it, but if you think you want to add.
No, I think it's very difficult. The reality is, जिस तरह मैं आपको वो एक तस्वीर दिखा रही थी of this girl. She said, one of them in my cohort in my charity, she said her father and her brother said कि तुम computer science नहीं कर सकते बिल्कुल. And she said मुझे लेने दें, they wouldn't let her take it. Then she took this free course and she did so well that she took it back to them and insisted. And then they said, "Acha, you've done it, now you're in the newspaper also, I guess you can do it." So it took that much for them to change their mind, and that's very sad. Because I think the only thing that I would recommend then is that you have to be persistent and know that other people believe in you. Maybe in your household, or maybe in your neighborhood, or in your city, you're finding in your family कि लोगों को समझ नहीं आ रही, but know that I believe in you. People like me, like the NIC and others, we believe in you, and this is why you're part of this group. There are many, many different groups in the world. Your identity is not defined by what one group believes. So you have to be persistent, and you have to surround yourself just like you did by reaching out to places where people believe in you, people let you try. And you should try. I have tried many things and failed many times on many things, but I allow myself to try and fail, and I don't really care if anybody thinks one way or the other. I mean, there were many times when I was in technology that many people I knew said, "ये क्या कर रही है? पता नहीं क्यों कर रही है? ज़ाया कर रही है, ज़िंदगी ज़ाया कर रही है, ये कर रही है, वो कर रही है." I never cared, to be honest, and I think that's the thing. Now, the other thing is the only way to not care and succeed is to work at it. So you have to take your courses, you have to continue to upskill yourself, and you have to become better and better so that you can stand on your own 2 feet. And the good thing is, in this world, if you are skilled, there's a demand for you. Pakistan is the #2 digital freelancer market in the world. People want the skills that Pakistani youth have, and they do not care whether it's a boy or a girl or rich or poor or old or young. They just want the skills, and there are lots of marketplaces for that as well. So I would encourage everyone to just focus on skills and keep your confidence, because places like this incubator believe in you.
That's very encouraging, Ayesha. Thank you. Then we have another question from the Quetta cohort again. This is Market Hunters, and they are into the foreign exchange trading. And through the software trader, they can trade efficiently. They want to develop online trading robots using machine learning in the form of Android and Windows applications. And Market Hunter will have greater accuracy rate with the help of machine learning. So they're into trading. His question is that if intelligence and machine learning are so good at predictions, then why don't all data scientists model and predict the stock market patterns and their prices and just become rich? So just some insights on that.
That's a very good question. It's not that simple. I think that we have seen this is not new, by the way. 20 years ago, the desks that I was working at on Wall Street were all hedge fund people. And us zamane mein, it made such a big difference to have close access. ताकि आप कोई अपना buy order or sell order algorithmically करें, it should be executed immediately, that we would place our servers beneath the stock exchange or as close as possible in New Jersey. That is how much every milli of millisecond matters when you're trading. So it's not straightforward. The market is sometimes irrational. It is not, the technical analysis of it does not always accurately predict what you should do. What you end up doing is kind of seeing certain triggers and seeing how other people will react to it. I'm not an expert in it, but I do have, having worked in the industry, having seen people make a lot of money and lose a lot of money. Because जो सबसे अच्छा करते हैं वो bets भी बहुत बड़ी लेते हैं. And part of it, to be honest, is also they have very they have PhDs in physics. Lots of them. They were all PhDs working next to where I used to work, in physics, in chemistry, and mathematics, in statistics and computer science. They are the ones who then build these models and look at huge amounts of data. But we do see that very large hedge funds are largely automated. And even a lot of the more and more trading that happens is through automation. But the risk appetite they have and they're willing to take, that is a human decision that they make. Basically.
Yes, that's a fantastic response. And I think I might have something to add to that. I mean, having been in the hedge fund industry for a decade and a half, we had a large machine learning AI team that supported investing activities. So this whole quantum mental way of doing things is actually quite the standard now. I think where machines aren't as good is identifying and harnessing idiosyncratic returns, right? So that idiosyncrasy is something that those patterns or sentiment captured through natural language processing doesn't really quantify well. And as we understand, the returns are a function of the misperception that the market has versus what the catalysts outcome, would be to justify a certain valuation. So, look, I mean, there are elements to this that on high frequency trading, HFT, where you need that millisecond stuff. I mean, it's a very different model to doing fundamental investing. So HFT obviously, is going on, has been going on for a long time, is under a lot of scrutiny as well. But I think, have machines replace portfolio managers yet? No. Will they at some point? I think almost certainly will. But the question really boils down to is that that I haven't been able to answer is if you automate everything, then you'll have automated outcomes, or i.e. returns. And what impact does that have on your ability to generate returns in liquid markets? Basically that whole efficient market hypothesis really comes into play there. So look, I promised to finish on time, 90 minutes. We've hit that spot. It went by in a jiffy. Can't thank you enough. This is a hugely inspiring and helpful session. I know our brothers and sisters in Pakistan don't like to wake up at 9 a.m. to start with sessions like this, but maybe that's a point number one where we need to make a change, I suppose, if we really have to harness our youth dividend and potential to sort of leapfrog. So with that, thank you so much. Look forward to hosting you in person post these pandemic times. We'll keep you updated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for having me. Bye, Saleem. Thank you.
Thank you.